These are the concepts behind group dynamics. In one way or another, we find ourselves belonging to various organizations. Within those organizations, there exist groups. These groups could be formal, could be informal, but we exist within some parameters of some groups. We are in those groups for a purpose. The purpose is to pursue the organizational goals. Friends, consider how inviting Jesus is. Think of how he invited the 12 apostles to follow him. Think of how you and myself can be welcoming to others within the organizations we belong to. Reflect on the nature of being inviting and welcoming. What does it look like? How does it sound? Being intentional about developing a welcoming attitude can be a strong start to any team building. As we end this devotion, I've indicated that each one of us belongs to a group, a team within an organization. It could be a family, it could be a school, it could be a bank, and so forth. It could be some sort of an NGO. I would like each one of us to think deeply and ask the same question I asked last week. What do people say about us in the groups, in the organizations we belong to? Do you think people are complaining about you in the group you belong to? Do you think people are wishing that could we have two of so and so within this team, within this organization? What do people think about you in the organization you belong to? Are we seen as indicators of invitation, of welcoming, or indicators of dispersion? Two or three reflections are invited, and then we begin our class. Welcome. Sorry. I've not seen any hand. Boaz.
Yes, Mwalimu, thank you. When you said you have not seen any hand, I just opted, let me raise the hand to start it off, not because I have the best response. But indeed, in organizations, people have different reasons, even why they hold certain positions in terms of ideas or perceptions towards some people. You'd actually find somebody who may be just out to look at others in the negative, simply because that is his or her way of enforcing some competitiveness for some space. And in that case, then she or he would think that they would be best placed maybe to ascend to certain higher levels. So for me, there are also those reasons. They're very subtle. You cannot actually see them You can't even understand them, but you'll just feel them. They do happen. But I think for me, the bottom line would be that whatever you're doing, it should be done in a way that even if somebody picked up something that then is disarming, it would not be out of your own intention that you wanted to cause discomfort. So the perceptions that they hold, you may not really have control over it. And that's where the group dynamics really happen. And I know this, I think I've experienced this in a number of institutions I've served in. It is practical. There are certain organizations that'll tell you, organizational politics is a normal thing, so don't worry about this. But at some point, it is disheartening because it causes other people really to lose morale and that kind of a thing. I've seen cases where now you really have to help those who are weak at heart or weak in soul, and who may not understand a little bit of that. So I think part of that is why within organization there are certain ethical standards, and there's a way in which then you create certain ground rules just to ensure that some modicum of harmony in the institution exists. But I think if we are to borrow the example of Jesus, you see, it's somehow maybe we are human. That's why we may not really measure to the expectations that much. Because again, you see, Jesus he had and he still has the opportunity to see through you and understand what you actually are thinking and even planning ahead. But for us, we have no capacity of that sort. So, Mwalimu, I think it is just doing the right thing, just being good, and if it is a professional job, accomplishing it well. If it is in a society where it is a responsibility thrust upon you or you are volunteering, just do it in the best way you can. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's
very well, Waruku. I think that's a very good reflection. I invite perhaps one or two more. Remember, when you talk, we've been given an example in today's devotion, this evening's devotion, of Jesus summoning these 12. Think of it that each of the 12 comes to join the group or the organization, to use our terminologies, with different skills. Each of these 12, maybe with the unique personality. Of course, in the ministry, we saw how unique and different personalities this team of 12 were. You see, Waruku, as you put it, that the Son of God must have had and must still be having the ability to look through people. Meaning, if he wanted to choose people of the same personality, of the same disposition, skills, he would still have done so. But he chooses to choose people with very differentiated orientations, very differentiated emotions, and so forth. Think about Peter, very hot-tempered. Think about that scene where he draws the sword and cuts that Ascari's ear. Think about that dialogue where he's commanded to return back the sword. Think about even chooses the one who will betray him. So think about those personalities. So, as it were, Waruku, you put it rightly, he must have deliberately chose these personalities. So also, do we find ourselves gathering different personalities, different people within organizations Some of us being put in leadership positions, others as members, even as members with very unique responsibilities. You know, as Christians, we think of it, we saw this last week. We are not just there because we are looking for an earning, but chances are we are there because at this time in space, we are the ones, you know, kind of charged to do what we are doing, meaning if we don't do it, nobody else does it. Juliet, what do you have to say about this?
Okay, thank you, Daktari, and good evening.
Good evening to you.
Just trying to, thank you so much, reflect on this about being welcoming to others. Last week we were with some friends and they were sharing with us what they have learned when they were studying the book of John. And we were going through where Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, and we were being challenged that Jesus even washed the feet of Judas Iscariot, whom he knew was going to betray him, and such like things. He did not feel like he's out of place, or maybe he's not such a good guy, but he was one of them. And I'm also trying to remember when he was choosing the disciples, he was even chosen there. And because God is all knowing, he had already known what was to happen ahead. And so when I'm looking at this, being welcoming to others, and based on the example that you have also given, the different people we work with in an organization, and just being there to know how to embrace all these people. Sometimes we feel they are difficult. Sometimes you wish that I would not want to work with so and so because of their attitude, or maybe the way they handle things. And you've also reminded us of Peter's temperament and so on. But he was even one of the disciples that Jesus chose to pick up, like to be the leader of the other disciples. So in my own taking is that all these people we interact with, especially in the various places we are, let me take for instance our areas of work, we will never get the people that we want or the characters that we would wish to have around us. But I believe God allows it for us, especially for us Christians, so that we may become accommodative. And that is even how our leadership is measured. If I'm able to handle all these people, despite their differences, that is now where I can say that I have achieved it as a leader, or there is something that is great in me that reveals my leadership quality, because I'm able to work with everyone, the emotional ones, the tough ones, the rude ones, and so on. And you handle them all together, and you give them an equal opportunity across. Though you may have your favorites, but you may not show it in the open because it is there. You'll always just have people that your heart are so much attached to, unlike others. And so we need to be welcoming to everyone, regardless of how they are. And this one will start by, first of all, inviting Jesus in us, because if Christ is the one who is leading our hearts, then he guides us and even gives us wisdom and the wisdom and the ability to handle each and everyone that is around us. Whether they may be great in they may be above us in the organization, they are beneath us, our peers, and so on. It all starts from there. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Juliet. Obada?
Good evening, Prof.
Good evening to you.
I think Juliet has really spoken my mind. But to add on that, I think the way Jesus Christ called disciples is a great illustration to us that we can all serve, especially when we are meant to follow or to achieve some predefined goals. I'm trying to look at various attitude and responsibilities that these people had before they became the disciples. I'm looking at some of them who are tax collectors, and others were maybe fishermen, as the Bible says. And I was trying to think that maybe it might have happened that this tax collector one day oppressed this fisherman. Maybe Peter was oppressed one day by Matthew, because Matthew, in their business world, needed to collect some few coins from them, and maybe Peter was not ready for that. And in my own imagination, I'm seeing a dispute between Peter and Matthew in the business world. But right now, they have to join hands together. They have to pray together. They have to break bread together, and they have to follow our Master. It's really encouraging to me that sometimes, regardless of
Did we lose
our,
you, Obada?
can you hear
We
me
seem
now?
to have lost him.
Can you hear me?
We can hear him.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, yeah. So now, sorry for that. Yeah, my take is that regardless of our various affiliations, I think when we are called to action, our DNAs automatically take another twist than the previous one. I'm not a Kenyan by birth. I'm Congolese by birth, but it gladdens my heart when I sit in our institution, when I spend sleepless nights because for my lesson, and the person that I'm teaching tomorrow is not from my country of origin. So, in a nutshell, accommodating each other regardless behavior, our ethnic affiliations, our background is what the master was teaching us basically in that action or act of inviting various people from various background in the vineyard of God.
So thank you very much, Obada, for that. I was thrown out because of network. I hope you can hear me now. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you. So I give a final comment before I invite the last person to speak. I think what Juliet said struck me also. You know, her emphasis on the word welcoming, on the concept welcoming. And this is striking because we learn from the Lord that when we welcome, we don't welcome people because they are good for us, because of vested interests. So the concept of welcoming, we do not welcome others because they are perfect. We do not welcome people because they are incapable of making mistakes. So I would like to invite you, Macho, to give your contribution, and at the end of your contribution, give us the opening prayer of this class, praying that the concept of group, of team in organization, we may be able to see the value in other people because they are people. Because there is something they bring to this organization, not because they are perfect. Macho.
Thank you, sir. My reflection was around Jesus' choice of Judas. Judas was known not to be very good with money. That's why he was he was able to sell out Christ with a few coins. Yet he was the one who was given the responsibility of putting their finances together. You know, when they would go out and get support, he's the one who was the accountant. And so I was wondering, as a leader, knowing what I know about somebody's weakness, would I still be able to put them in the position that tempts their weakness? In this case, putting somebody in finance who you know has itchy fingers. And so that's what I was reflecting with this. But then anyway, Juliet already told us about the fact that God knows each one of us and our weaknesses, yet he still trusts us. God knows us with our challenges, even as leaders, yet he still gives us responsibility of leadership. He still gives us the Great Commission. He still looks at us and thinks, my children should be out there winning souls. And we fail many times. And so I was just looking at the disciples and seeing he brought a team not because they're perfect, but he brought a team because he knew even these ones, each one of them can contribute something. So sometimes you will not have the perfect team in the eyes of everybody, but the team that you have can be able to accomplish much, just like the disciples did and spread the gospel across nations. And we were able to be privileged to receive the gospel. So may God help us as leaders, wherever we are. If we have weak people among us, how do we still find what their strength is and utilize for the greater good of the team? So let me pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness and mercy. Thank you for your love of our lives. Thank you, Lord, that you've watched over us since the last time we met in this particular class. And so, Lord, as we begin this class, how we pray that you help us as leaders in our different capacities and the different areas where you've planted us to work, oh God, that we will be able to embrace the team spirit, that we will see people as you see them, oh God, because we do realize that we are not perfect as well, but you, by your grace, you have chosen us to be leaders in the spaces you've given us. So I pray in this class, help us to grow. May the word that comes through today, may the lessons that come through today find fertile ground in our hearts today. I pray for our lecturer that, Lord, you speak through him, even as he teaches us today. We thank you and we bless you, for it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you very much.
Amen.
You just a moment. Just a moment, bear with me. Right. Yeah. So as I mentioned this week, we are looking at group dynamics. I'm just looking for my slides, just a moment. My slides seem to be mixed up a bit, just a moment. I'll be here. I'll be here. Just a small mix up, just a moment. I have two gadgets. One of my gadgets shows the slides correctly, the other one can't. Just trying to make sure they're synchronized. Resolve.
Hello?
Yeah, have some reflections as you wait for the loading. Just a moment. Just have some reflections as you wait for my loading.
Chris, would you employ Judas to be your accountant?
I'm struggling to synchronize some document here.
Lawrence, I cannot.
Right. Technology can be so interesting. It is supposed to make things easier, but it can be so interesting at times.
Sister Macho. Sister Macho.
Yes, Jimmy.
Where do you think Judas is? Is he in heaven or in hell?
It's not documented whether he repented. It's documented that he killed himself.
What do you think? Is he in heaven or in hell?
That's why I'm saying it is not documented. I have no evidence that he confessed. I have no evidence that he repented.
There's
So
a
if he
mention
did
of
not repent,
there's a mention in scripture
yes,
about the events that took place after Jesus is resurrected or actually died.
after
Whereby
he
we are told
resurrected.
about some tombs were flung
Open, yes.
Yes.
And they walked out and people were able to see their
Exactly.
relatives.
Don't you think one of the
You
tombs
think
belonged to
Judas was in
Judas?
the relative?
You guys are so interesting. What?
Lawrence, I have a question.
Yes.
And
Yeah, Jimmy,
this is
interesting.
yes, this is a question to all my colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
In the spirit of group dynamics in an organization, I appreciate the work done by Dr. Now, we have Judas Iscariot in our organizations who will greet you in the morning smiling with you. But deep down, their hearts, they are very serious Judas Iscariot, that they would want your downfall. And that they're always looking for us the slightest moment to bring you down. As Christians and students, master students of and of course in the spirit of dynamics, how do you deal with such people? Thank you. Florence, I welcome you to begin.
Juliet has raised her hand. Anyway, for me,
I raised my hand. Sorry, I think I lowered it. I didn't lower.
Okay, so I think for me, that's what I think Waruk was talking about. You know, the politics that are usually even in corporates. As you go higher, it really does become hotter as opposed to cooler in terms of political machinations. People, if I could use that word, wakuchimba huku left, right, and center. And in the setup that I am in, you find people who came because they are godfathers or whoever they are, can get away with not working and making sure that the people who are working are so demoralized that they end up, just giving up. And so how do you deal with them? I think for me, it's do your best, give your best work as you're working for the Lord, because the Lord sees. And some of these battles, I have seen in my experience, God fights for you. When you're honest and when you're a leader of integrity, and when you're serving Him, not serving man, I've seen God fighting the Judases in my midst. So that's my take.
Wow, thank you. I would want to hear from Eugene.
Sonya, leo umekuwa lecturer.
Chris, what was your question?
How you deal with Judas?
Taslin, let me be the lecturer for a minute before Dr. Harry comes in. Taslin?
You are allowed. You are allowed. No, I don't have any sentiments. I'm just listening.
Okay. Faith?
Let me just continue listening and see the views that you have.
Where Faith, wacha kuhepa. Just respond.
anyone who is ready to
Okay, Chris, I agree with Florence, though it is always very tough. That's where by now our hearts and allowing Christ just to reign, because they are part of us, and you cannot show them an attitude where as well, because now what is the difference between you and them? Remember, we are being called upon to love, and we don't love the good people, we love all. That is what love is all about. So even as you struggle with them, the best is to pray, make God know your issues, and he will just fight the battles in silence. One, the person may change. Two, he may also take them out of the organization for your sake. But it is up us to just embrace them. I can see, sometimes much will be told, because you'll be, how can you put this person with all that knowledge of them? Equally, God knows why they have to be there. Maybe there's something, not maybe, there's something they are good at. I believe so, despite their weaknesses.
Wow.
Right. So we are set. That was very good, Chris. Chris, thank you for standing in.
Yes. Dr. Just a minute before you come in, allow me to ask my brother Sam to briefly explain how professional one should keep those people. Because he's saying keep it professional. Kindly explain
good
how
evening,
professional.
Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, brother.
Yeah, if you have a few Judas in your institution, I think you are safer keeping it professional, in the sense that just deal with the work that you're doing. Although largely it depends on who between you and the Judas is subordinate to the other. It is worse if the Judas is your superior, because even if you keep it professional, they will never notice that. It's easier if the Judas is your subordinate, because then your position gives you authority, and it's very easy for you to just ask them to do what they're supposed to do. What I meant by keeping it professional is that there are times when we keep away relationships from our place of work, so that if you don't agree with someone's way of thinking or how they want to do certain things, you can turn a blind eye and go on and do your business. My 2 cents, Chris.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And that means, especially if, of course, someone is not within the line of department that maybe you him or her, then keeping it a blind eye is the best medicine. I think I get it. Thank you so much, Sam. Thanks, colleagues. Welcome, Daktari.
Asante. So thank you, Chris. You've done quite well, kept us on our toes and reflecting on very relevant issues, really. So as I said, this evening, we intend to make a reflection on the nature, operation, and the impact of group dynamics in organizational behavior and task performance at the workplace. So really our interest is to ask ourselves, how do group dynamics take place within organization? How do they operate, and where are we? In summary, we intend to gain an in-depth learning about the following 8 issues. 1, to get an understanding of the concept and existence of group, team in organizations. We'll be showing the difference between these two concepts, group and team, and how they are related to one another. Second, we'll be able to delve into an understanding of what we distinguish as formal and informal groups or teams. Third, we will be able to distinguish between group and team within organizations. Fourth, we will focus on the elements, as you'll see in the last one. In the elements, we'll try to define what is group dynamics and focus on the elements that define group dynamics. Next, we'll look at the factors of group formation. We'll ask ourselves a question: why do individuals form or join groups? What motivates individuals within an organization to form groups, to join groups? Next, we'll look at the stages in group formation, how groups form within an organization. Seventh, we'll look at the role of leadership in shaping, guiding, directing group dynamics. As I said earlier, we will individually look at the various facets, the various elements that constitute group dynamics, so that at that end point, we'll be able to say, if we want to control, to guide, and direct group dynamics towards certain organizational goals, then these are the things to look for within an organization and really take a control or a direction of them. We begin to look at the existence of groups. When do we say a group exists? You know, how does a group come to exist? We note that a group exists in an organization if its members are motivated to join. What we mean here is you have an organization, you have various groups, you can put there various groups can exist on paper in files, but nobody may be motivated to join any of them. You see? Just like you go to institutions of higher learning, like I've seen in public universities, and you find groups like based on tribes, based on counties, and so forth. So a group exists in an organization if its members are motivated to join it. Second, if its members perceive the group as a unified unit of interacting people. So they must be able to see this. Members must perceive that group as a unified unit that attracts the interaction of people. The opposite of this is that we may have groups in an organization, but these groups are such that perhaps the boss or the leader of that group is the CEO of the organization, and when he's there, he listens to nobody. People are not interacting. You know, the leader is a know-it-all, so nobody talks. Slowly by slowly, you find people dropping out of the group. A group exists in an organization if its members contribute in various amounts to the group processes. This is a reinforcement of the second idea. Members want to feel involved, want to feel that they are participating. So if they are not participating, if they feel they are not involved, they are likely not to move on with the group membership. Members within the group must be able to reach some form of agreement and have their disagreements, if you like, resolved through various forms of interactions. You see, this idea that there'll be disagreements, but these disagreements must reach some form of resolution through interactions. If they don't, chances are the group collapses. So these are elements that map out the existence of a group within an organization. Now, at that level, how do we view a group within an organization? A group can be viewed as consisting of two or more people who share these elements. One, are able to interact with each other. They're able to share common beliefs. They view themselves as being members of a group. They are conscious of this, that group consciousness. And then, very importantly, they must at least deal or interact with one another on a continuing basis, meaning that if a group exists, but, for example, they meet once in a year, for example, if for example, this is a group, a church organization, for example, if this is an organization or a group of members from a given region, say people are within that big organization and are meeting as tribesmen. Now, this fourth idea is saying these people must be seen to interact with one another on a continuous basis, meaning if that interaction collapses, for example, you find people who used to meet perhaps once weekly begin to meet perhaps once fortnightly, and then once a month, and then the meetings are erratic, they can meet once in 3 months and so forth. So that continued basis begins to collapse. And then a group important to recognize that there must be at least that interaction which takes place on a continuous basis. Now, these two or more people, as we have said, must be able to share common beliefs. These beliefs are seen as the ones that bring them together, that compel them or bind them together, bring them and solidify them together into a group. They must see themselves as belonging to a distinct entity. So within that organization, a group will exist, and this existence will be firmed up on the basis that these people have the consciousness of belonging to a distinct entity, which we are calling here the group. Now, how do we classify groups within an organization? You move to an organization, this organization, I keep on saying it could be a school, it could be that NGO, it could be that bank you work for, it could be whatever the organization, in formal lectures, we've been able to define what organizations are. So whatever this organization is, as you get to this organization, you find various forms of groups. Generally, we divide them into two, formal versus informal groupings. Formal groups are those found in organizations where people are, one, frequently assigned to work in groups. So you see, they are assigned, formal groups, they are assigned to work in given groups. So we're talking about in our schools where we may find people within departments. In our banks, in our NGOs, we may as well have departments that are well defined, which define how people operate within that organization. So we are able to talk about mathematics department, humanities department, and so forth. In formal groups, people are normally task-oriented. They are task-oriented. For example, we talk about committees, I've said. We talk about departments, I've said. So formal groups are task-oriented entities. It is that task that defines its existence. Once that task is not in place, then the group must disappear. When we mention something like a committee, we'll be looking at this in a moment. Think about some of you who could be members of board of management in schools or so forth. Once a board of management is constituted, there are committees within those boards. People talk about the finance committee, the discipline committee, and so forth. Now, once that board is dissolved after 3 years, or whatever its lifespan is, then the task of that committee has ended. So the group is dissolved, it ceases to exist. Therefore, every organization, organizational member must belong to at least one organizational group. The idea here is we exist in those organizations as individuals because of specific formal tasks that make us to be part of that organization. So if you are a teacher of geography, you'll find yourself within that group belonging to the geography department or something. Even when you talk about church organizations, you'll find within that church organization, you have a specific role perhaps to play. So you'll find yourself belonging to that group because of the role you play in that group. In fact, what makes groups stick together, the formal groups stick together, is this idea that within an organization, every member must at least have one formal role, must at least have a given specific task. And that task can now be interpreted to define more or less a group will belong to. Now, informal groupings within organizations arise from social interactions among members of that organization. So in this case, you may want to find that membership is more or less voluntary. Membership in this case is not controlled by, say, the organization formally, but membership is actually controlled by voluntary, the voluntary decision of members. So you find in this case, membership of informal groups is voluntary and is heavily based really on the interpersonal. As you'll find, I think a perfect example in public universities, for example, I've seen, I may not know, will put banners and say something like Muranga Students Association, Kamba Students Association, Kilifi Students Association, something of that kind. Now, it can't be that everybody from Cumberland will be able to be a member of that group because the membership is voluntary. And that is how the formal and informal groupings within an organization operate. Now, still looking at these types of groupings within an organization seen as formal and informal, we still find within every category, we have different types. For example, among what we may call the formal groups, we may have what we call the command groups, the command types of groups. Now, command group is a formal group which is determined by structure. The structure is very much hierarchical. The concept command, you see, very much hierarchical, So the idea of command group determined by the structure of that group. And then we have what we call the task group. Task group are formal groupings that are organized for a specific task so that there is a task that comes up. I give an example. You are in an organization that is going to be a fundraiser in a year's time. So some form of groups come up. This is formal. This is not informal because this one is not going to be voluntary. You'll find really the organization formally putting members within certain groupings. So task group, where you find now members will be put together and you are told your role in that fundraiser is to do this. Yours is to do programs. Yours is to do this. Yours is to make sure the seating arrangement is done. the idea here is that grouping revolves and is defined around a task. And then finally, we have what we call the committee groupings. Now, the committee groupings here normally are based, or rather they are defined on the basis of certain given problems outside of the regular assignment. So you see, something comes up and then groupings are formed. Maybe I should be able to set perhaps an explanation here that will correct what I've just said. You know, when you look at task performance, I think because of what we see, committee performance, the examples must be different here. Task performance will be something with regard to that organization's goals. To that organization's goals. So that if we think about a school, then we must identify the organizational goals of this school. If we think about a bank, we must identify the organizational goals of this bank, so that the task groups will be about the goals of that organization. So if the goals of that organization is to bring up a means of this, then the task groups, you know, you will think of them in terms of subject departments. But you see, committee groups will be more or less what I said earlier, because you see, this one is dealing with problems outside regular assignment. And that's why we say, that's why correct to say, this organization exists, it's a school. His role, his organizational goals are not to do harambes. But you see, there is going to be a harambe in that school. So a committee will be set up. You could be belonging to a church. The organizational goal of that church is not to have harambes, but there is an issue coming up to buy seats in the church, to do harambe in the church, whatever it is. So a committee is formed. So you see, these are formal groupings. For the informal groupings, we talk about social groups, people who enjoy each other's company. It could be chat groups and so forth. You know, it could be, you know, could be Facebook groups, whatever it is. It could be sometimes even WhatsApp group or something. Really very much social, not based on some formal idea. Another example of informal groupings is the interest groups. So interest groups here, you know, develop informally around a common interest. It could be news groups and so forth. So you see, you can now see the various ramifications of various types of groups within these main ones, the formal and informal groupings. Now, having understood the concept of what a group is important then to ask the related terminology, team. How does the concept of team relate to the concept of group? What are the similarities? What are the differences? In looking at what a group is and what a team is, we set out to analyze about 6 distinctions between them. First, they can be, group and team can be distinguished on the basis of their definition. A group is defined as referring to a number of people who are connected by some shared activity. You know, no, they are connected by some shared interest. You see, a number of people connected by some shared quality. Whereas a team would refer to a number of persons that are associated together in work or activity. As we gain the distinction, it will become clearer. So there is a shared activity, you know, it is the activity that brings them together. But in team, these people are conscious of being together. You know, in group, these people may not even be conscious of belonging to the same group. In team, they are directly conscious of belonging to the same group. And then think about a common goal. A common goal. A group members rather, may not necessarily share a common goal. That's what I've just indicated as members. But team members have a common cause, a common goal they are pursuing. Look at the two terminologies distinguished by their roles, and you'll discover that groups have specific roles, have specific duties, which are not assigned to individuals. You see, there are specific roles, specific duties within that organization, but these ones are simply assigned to groups, but not to individuals. You see, by this we mean roles exist within that organization. Duties exist within that organization. But you see, they are assigned to the group. It is the group to deliver those specific roles. It is the group to deliver those duties. You see? When you talk about team, you find that specific tasks are assigned of that organization, of what you want to do in that organization. You see, every member is assigned a specific role. We give example of if you are lifting a table, or if you are cleaning a room, a hall within a school. If you look at it as a team dynamic, a team idea is that this individual has been assigned to clean the tables. This one has been assigned to sweep the floor. This one has been assigned to remove the cobwebs. And in the final analysis, we are saying the end result is that we have a clean room. So you see, everybody has a specifically assigned task. Members in a group are independent since they do not rely on each other. You see, in a team, members rely on each other. They want to have that room clean. They rely on what each one will do. In terms of accountability, within groups, members have individual accountability. Whereas in teams, members share a mutual accountability. They work closely together to solve that team or organizational task. Looking at it from the point of view of knowledge of other members, in a group, members may not even have seen each other if the group especially consists of many members. Whereas in a team, members are usually aware of each other's weakness, each other's strength, and so forth. And that determines how they mutually operate together. Now, to put these distinctions figuratively, look at this slide talking about the difference between a group and a team within an organization. When you look at a group, notice, for example, say the blue people, the brighter colored people, the black people, and so forth. You see, they are placed in that organization, and the members, the black members there, might not be aware of the existence of these ones. You see, there are places that they are not aware of other people's existence even. But look at a team. Look at a team. The task was to lift up this load. So you see, the member here is aware of what the other member is doing. And the activity of this member is dependent upon by the other member. Look at what the other members are doing, rising up, supporting one another to be able to achieve a certain goal. So you see, as a team, the members are directly aware of what the other one is doing, the contribution that the other one is bringing to the organization. What we must note is that groups and teams are critical for an organization. They enhance collaboration within an organizational structure. They foster creativity. They foster innovation. They encourage even the sharing of knowledge and experience. They increase efficiency by dividing tasks among members. Even when you talk about a group, you see, there is a geography teacher teaching in Form 1, another geography teacher teaching in Form 2. You see, they divide those responsibilities. One teacher may not be aware of what the other one, which topic has reached which one and so forth. But you see, they come together and they coalesce together to bring about efficiency, to bring about the accomplishment of tasks within an organization. Groups and teams boost morale and motivation. They promote a positive work attitude within an organization. So you can be able to see this particular slide shows you that kind of a thing. Now, having said that, so you understand the relationship between groups within an organization, teams within an organization. They may more or less refer to the same idea. Perhaps the focus should be to distinguish what we would call formal and informal groupings within an organization. So this now brings us to the discussion of what group dynamics are. What is group dynamics? Now, group dynamics generally refer to social processes and forces by which people interact and behave in social situations, whether these situations be formal or be informal. So group dynamics are about how people interact, are about social processes of interaction. Group dynamics is about, the intricate forces that define how people behave and interact within an organization, within a group. So group dynamics would refer to the intricate interplay between three things: between behaviors of individuals, between how they interact in the light of their behaviors, and how they relate to each other within that organization and within that group. So when we are talking about group dynamics, figure out a school and figure out the formal groupings within that school. Figure out, say, the cooks within the school. Figure out mathematics department, humanities department, language department. So the way people relate within that grouping, the forces that mark out and define their behavior, the interaction and how they relate to each other, and how these behaviors, interactions, and relationships finally affect the overall organizational goals of that school is what we are talking about and defining as group dynamics. Group dynamics involve the influence of personality, of attitudes, of power and behavior on group processes, if you like, on social processes. So group dynamics are about the relationship between individuals Are they conducive to achieving the group goals? Or are they undermining the defined group goals? Remember, the various groups within an organization must coalesce together to ensure the overall organizational goal or the overall organizational outcome. Therefore, group dynamics, when you talk about group dynamics, we are trying to describe how groups are organized and conducted in terms of the leadership within those groups, the participation within those groups, and the cooperation within those groups. So whether the leadership is enabling or not, whether the members are meant to participate actively or others are just passive, whether there is cooperation or no cooperation, whether there are gossips within the group or so, all those things that are sometimes even unrelated to the organizational goals of that group or of that organization. All these define what we refer to as group dynamics. Now, what factors influence, what factors define group formation? There are various factors that can be said to define group formation. You know, why people come together, why people form groups. There are various reasons. You may want to think about the physical, the psychological distance, proximity, the sharing of common activities, the need for security and protection of individuals, a simple idea of a feeling to be affiliated, and so forth. All these reasons, all these factors define why people come together. Think about, for example, the first factor, physical and psychological distance or proximity, as a factor that can explain why individuals form or join groups. You know, for example, it could be people who are sitting or working in one area, in one office, may want to form a group because of that physical proximity. Simply, these people work or sit in the same area. They work in the same office. They might want to form a group. You may even want to hear about, welfare groups in organization. And these welfare groups could simply be people who belong to that department. They have formed a welfare group. So generally, you note that people who are physically close to one another will generally develop closer relationship than those that are further apart. You may want to think about, people working in a place and, like this idea of closed doors within our organizations. Because of those closed doors, somebody feels the absence. You find a place now somebody moving from this room, this office, to the other office. This is very, very common with the secretaries, for example, in organizations. You find the secretary of that department moving to go and greet the secretary of the other department. Sooner or later, you hear the secretaries have formed a welfare group or something because of that psychological distance. Think about the need to share common activities. As people work together, as people do the same things, as people teach the same subject, as people perhaps, have the same tasks within the organization. This sharing of common activities, sooner or later, leads to more and more interaction between those members. And so they end up forming groups. Think about security and protection. Group membership can give an individual that sense of security. It can provide an individual with a real degree of protection. A good example is that talk about welfare, where people join and they imagine, whenever I'm in this problem, this difficulty, these ones will come to my rescue and so forth. This could even be the reason why when you find yourself in a far distant country, in a far distant place from your home, in that sense of security, you gather people even who come from the neighboring districts, become so close to you, you form a group, you end up saying, these tribes, whatever group. A need for affiliation, for example. Every individual needs to be affiliated, some kind of emotional support. Every individual is always in need of some emotional support. And this emotional support can be satisfied by membership to a given group. You know, so here you describe things like professional groupings, you know, because you want to be affiliated to a given group. Affiliation may be because of the values we hold. So you see, with all the other reasons, when you read about them, these factors may explain to us why we move to form groups, why we move to become members of certain groups. Now, there are various stages in group formation. You know, groups don't just come into existence. When you talk about informal groupings, they go through certain stages to become what they are. Even when you talk about formal groupings in organizations, they equally go through various stages. Bruce Tuckman in 1950s identified a 5-stage development process that most teams or groups follow to become really high performing. Now, these 5 stages are about how a group evolves, how it begins through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and reaches stage 5. How groups evolve, how groups begin and reach their closure. You'll notice groups are not eternal. So in one way or another, groups begin and reach an end. You cannot say groups are eternal because even members within organization, some will retire, some will transfer, and so forth. So groups cannot be eternal. So Tuckman talks about 5-stage development process that helps us to understand how groups evolve, how a group begins, how it maps up, you know, its task performance levels, when a group is at its optimum performance, and when a group is at its lowest performance, as it were. Tuckman identifies these groups as forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So you can see even in those terminologies, forming, beginning, and then moving on until the group adjourns, the group ends. Now, Tuckman's model explains that as the group or team develops maturity and ability, relationships within that group are established more, they are firmed up. As this happens, the leadership style also changes to become more collaborative, or if you like, to become more shared, more enabling. You know, as a group begins, leadership may appear to be concentrated in an individual. As the group matures, leadership now is diffused. People begin to do things without a direct reference to one individual, to one center of power. So think about the organization you belong to and look at how authority, how leadership, how managerial command is structured in that organization. Is it more structured in such a manner that is concentrated in an individual? To what extent can people operate within that organization, within that grouping of that organization, without reference to the CEO has said, the head of department has said, and so forth? Therefore, group progression as it were, through the stages can be shown in this diagram here. Now, when you look at this diagram, I'll try to explain it. We are talking about the various phases of group or team development. So you can be able to see the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, as it were, levels of group formation or stages of group formation. When you look at the first stage, I would like you, what I would like you to focus on in this slide, I would like you to focus both on the graph up here that gives you an idea of performance levels across time. Performance levels across time. Notice that at the beginning, when the group is beginning, that is the forming stage. Look at the performance level. Look at the performance level within the forming stage. Look at, if you look at this axis as the performance, so at this point, the lowest of performance, at this point, the highest of the performance. You see, for example, before even we explain the characteristics, you can be able to see where storming is. Storming is at the lowest performance level. And you can see where performing is at the highest performing level. Now, look at the characteristics that define the various stages. At the forming level, members will display eagerness. Now, I want to provide a practical example. Think about one of these fine days. You move, maybe you meet in a funeral, you meet in some social gathering, and then you bump into your high school classmate of several years ago, Form 1 through Form 4, several years ago. Then as you bump into your classmate, you start asking, oh, where is so-and-so? Where have you been over the years, and so forth? And then you are there, you start saying, I met so-and-so. You even exchange contacts. And then you agree to start a WhatsApp page, or rather a platform. Then you agree to start bringing more members on board. Then, as you bring more members on board, you now agree on such and such a day, let's have a physical meeting. And of those alumni, whatever, your classmates from 1 to Form 4, in the first meeting, you discover that you meet, say, 15 of you. Perhaps out of a total possible 200 people. Once you are there, you discover, oh, so-and-so died, so-and-so went to America, so-and-so is such and such a place, and so forth. Now, I want you to figure out what would be going on in that first meeting. You are meeting as former classmates who met, say, over 20 years ago, or even more sometimes. I want you to figure out the mood in that first meeting. We are talking about forming stage. As you meet in that first meeting, you'll discover that members will display a lot of eagerness. Members will indicate a lot of an urge to socialize. Members are generally polite in tone. If you like, they are, as it were, pregnant with expectation. Members will display a sense of sticking to safe topics. However, they are unclear about how one will fit into this group. They start asking in that first meeting, what should we be doing? What should be our engagements? How many times should we be But you see, members are so guarded. They display some anxiety in their questioning. Those are the characteristics when a group is first forming. Be it a formal group within an organization, be it an informal group. You belong to that NGO. It is situated wherever it is. You are working perhaps in Nigeria, you are working in whatever country. You come together and you say Kenyans come together, you know. In that first, second, third meeting, these are the characteristics that will define that kind of meeting. It is in its forming stage. Now, the strategies, the dynamic strategies to adopt there is that they'll emerge somebody who wants to take the lead. They want to be, you know, somebody there wants to be highly visible. You know, the strategies in leadership there, if you are a leader at that stage, at the forming stage, your duty is to facilitate introduction, that let's begin by introductions. Where have we been? What about your family? How many children do you have? Where do you work? And so forth. Where have you been across these 15, 20 years and so forth? You want to struggle as a leader to help this group establish clear expectations and so forth. Now, look at the storming stage. Look at the storming stage. So first of all, before we move to the storming stage, you can see here in terms of performance in the middle there, for performance, task performance. Here, if you tell people we contribute this, whatever, you see the task performance and how people will behave is in the middle there. Now, storming stage, the way the word sounds, storming. This is now when the group is now, if you may like, experiencing storms. Storms are not some of those things you admire to experience. So in this second stage, second developmental stage, you start experiencing some resistance. You know, in the forming stage, the first stage, in the forming stage, there was a lot of eagerness. Even some people started saying that, can we be meeting, you know, perhaps weekly? Can we be meeting monthly? Can we have, you know, online meetings in the forming stage? People are so eager. But in the storming stage, the second stage there, here, the characteristics that define this is that the group experiences some level of resistance. There is lack of participation. You call meetings, they don't come. You say we contribute for this, they don't contribute. But compare at the forming stage when you said we contribute, you know, you are just talking online and you said we contribute 2,000 shillings each for our first meeting. Everybody wants to contribute. But in the storming stage, you say, let's contribute this to visit so and so. And there is really very minimal participation of members. Now, conflicts start to emerge. Conflicts start to emerge that are simply based on the differences of opinions. There is even competition, you know, within the members. There are high emotions. You can imagine that. You came together and you defined yourself as, you know, Kenyans living in Kuwait, Kenyans living in such and such a place. Forming stage, you began so well. Storming stage, really the group is at storms, is experiencing storms. That is why you see the performance at the storming stage is at its lowest point. Now, leadership within the storming stage will involve requesting and encouraging feedback from the members. You must have members talk. If you have a WhatsApp group, whatever it is, you must encourage members to talk. You must encourage criticism. You must encourage people to withstand the storm. You are in the storming stage. Leadership is about identifying issues and facilitating their resolution. So that the issue is, what the issue is. Did we visit so-and-so? You've never visited so-and-so. The issue is how do we contribute, how much, and so forth. Identify the issues and facilitate their resolution. So gradually, as a leader, seek to normalize the matters as you enhance trust in honoring commitments. What to note once more again, in the storming stage, the group is at its least performance. This is when the group is threatened even to be dismantled and so forth. Now, those groups that withstand the storm will be able to move to the next stage, the next phase, which is the norming stage. So you can see in terms of performance, from forming stage, you come down. At the storming stage, the performance within the group is at its least. Then from that point, those groups that survive the storm, their performance begins to rise in the norming stage. In the norming stage, people are beginning to mature. People are beginning now to solve the conflicts. It has received good leadership. The leadership has helped the members to identify the critical issues. The leadership has helped members really to facilitate problem solving. Now, the group in the norming stage is now developing cohesion, is beginning to develop cohesion. It is now focused on the purposes and the goals of that group. Why do we exist? They begin to define those purposes clearly. Members now begin to get engaged. They become more supportive. The anxiety which they had, which developed beginning in the forming stage and was at its highest in the storming stage, begins to be lowered down. How will leadership in the storming stage of group formation behave? Now, as a leader, if you are the CEO, if you are leading really the group of leadership within that organization or that group, begin to recognize individual and team efforts. This is when the rewards come in. This is when organizational or group learning comes in. So provide more learning opportunities and feedbacks for your members. Monitor the energy of the team. Don't allow the team to engage in those activities that perhaps the energies required are not available within the group. Because if you do that, when they fail, they'll get back to the storming stage. Now, once you do that and you succeed, you see, the idea of norming, you even start, developing the norms that will guide. So a flashback a bit, forming stage, a lot of eagerness, anxieties coming in, and clear goals and clear destiny. Storming, you are about to disintegrate. There is a lot of resistance. The idea here is so-and-so does not come for a meeting and so forth. Now, because of those conflicts that you experience in the storming stage, you move to the norming stage, and now you say, how do we resolve this? So the idea norming, you begin to develop norms that will guide that group. So this is the way we need to behave and not this way, and so forth. Now, groups that succeed and develop better norms, firm norms that will help that group manage to move to the performing phase. you can see in the performing stage, the group reaches its highest level of performance before it begins to calm down. So members here within the performing level or phase will demonstrate independence and self-management. Now, people now begin to become self-driven. They are highly motivated. They exhibit a lot of trust and empathy. People feel with others. In performing stage, this is whereby you find once a member is absent because of sickness, because of whatever, another member volunteers to stand in without even being asked. Individuals, here differ to team needs. Now, there is effective production of the deliverables. In fact, that is why the performance is at its peak in the performing stage. No wonder the phase is referred to as the performing phase. That's why we say this particular phase is consistent, is synonymous with the performance, and so it is called performance. Now, in this stage, what is the preoccupation of leadership? Leadership in this stage assumes the role of guiding from the side. In fact, if you like, in this stage, leadership has now percolated into the group members, in the team members, is no longer deposited in an individual. As a leader, you focus on celebrating successes. This should be the stage when you talk about, rewarding, those teachers who got whatever number of A's and so forth. You encourage collective decision-making and problem solving as a leader when your group has reached the performing stage. Finally, in the adjourning phase, the way the word sounds, adjourning, you see, this is the climax of group development or group formation. So here, adjourning can also be referred to as the transitioning or the morning phase. Why transitioning? Why morning phase? This is the time now, if I may, for lack of good illustration, you see, the best mathematics teacher in the school, the best history teacher in the school, who has reached that level of producing perhaps 80 A's out of the possible 150 students within that subject. Adjourning phase is when that teacher is now retiring from the school. He will no longer be a member of that group. That is why we are talking about transitioning or the morning phase. So this group, if you mark the illustration I've given, then this group will be defined, will be characterized by potential sadness. Notice the group is just coming after performing stage. You would have thought it should be in a celebratory mode. But because of the illustration I've given, there is potential sadness. At that stage, we are now recognizing both the team, if you like, the group and individual effort. That's why, we are saying now we are giving this prize to this teacher, we are giving him a car, we are giving him whatever it is, and so forth. You see, we appear to be happy celebrating that person, but that celebration is marked up with a potential sadness and mourning. So in this adjourning phase, we can describe it as that phase of disbanding the team temporarily. Leadership in this phase must learn to recognize change has come, must provide an opportunity for summative team evaluation. What are the lessons learned from this member who is retiring from the team? This is a headmaster that has been in this school for the last 20 years, for the last 15 years, until the mean score has reached that level. Leadership is about what do we learn from him as he departs. Leadership will be about providing an opportunity for individual acknowledgements. Leadership will be about celebrating the team's accomplishment and so forth. So when you look at that kind of situation, in a nutshell, you can now see in this particular slide, when you look at time vis-a-vis team or group effectiveness, you can see forming stage, you are at that level, more or less enthusiastic, so eager, kind of midway. The team's effectiveness, we can say it is average, not too bad, not too low, and not too high. At the storming stage, the effectiveness of the group, the output of the group is at its lowest. The effectiveness is at its lowest at the storming stage. At the norming stage, the effectiveness of the group begins to rise again as time moves by. It begins to rise again and reaches its apex at the performing stage. So, at the performing stage, the group is at its most most pronounced performing level. If you like, the group of or team's effectiveness is at its highest at the performing phase. And then, thereabout, the adjournment comes. So when I post these particular slides, you may want, I've just pasted here, you may want to listen to this YouTube video. You'll be able to see the discussions that relate time, group effectiveness in the light of the five phases of group formation and so forth. Now, to that level, to that point, somebody would like to weigh in to help us understand what is happening at this stage. Anybody would like to weigh in? Anybody would like to weigh in? Yes, Tasli.
Thank you, Daktari.
Yes.
As a person in the governance and in the governance space and advocacy, I've been part of so many groups, and I feel like this table or this map, that graph that you have just removed, depicts the clear picture of how groups work. First of all, you start with a lot of zeal, where everyone wants to be the change, like you dream about big things, and then all of a sudden things just starts happening. You begin to distrust each other, and power dynamics starts to play, because also you've now even selected leadership, and some of the people that have not gotten some of these leadership roles feel like maybe they were not treated the way they wanted, and so some of them even get out at this point. And then the next one is now when people now are more calm, everything is now settling. I think that's the performance, or is it the norming? The norming is now when you set the rules of the organization, what you want, you set the objectives, and even some of the people that had left will come back at this point. It has happened. And then now you work, and then after you've attained your objective, it fizzles out, and the group can either end officially or just through natural selection. It just ends without even communication. Thank you.
Yeah, very well, Taslin. You make very good observations there. And what is unique is to be able to see this is the real life now, which we find in groups. So in the name of a group, look at your organization and look at the group you belong to within that organization. Evaluate these phases in the context of those elements, and you're able to see what this is really all about. I can see the hand of Madiang up. Madiang?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Just a question.
Yes.
In your experience teaching this and maybe even seeing it practically, are there situations where you have witnessed storming coming back again between norming and performing? And is that such a risk for organizations in such a way that it can put it into dire straits?
Yeah, you are right, Madiang. And you see, that's why, if, for example, we were to look, let me see if I can locate the previous slide. You see, if you look at the previous slide, we made it to be so heavy in the sense that you are able to reflect both at the characteristics that define that group, and based on those characteristics, what would be the performance index in that group? And then what to note, Madiang, what would be the leadership styles that will propel that phase to the next level? So what you are actually raising is a critical issue. You are trying to say in a nutshell, if leadership dynamics fail, chances are we can get back. I think you get Madiang.
Yes, yes.
If leadership dynamics fail, chances are we might be getting back to where we've come from and so forth. I think you get it.
Thanks.
Good. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to? Yes, Whiter, I can see Whiter, Regina. Whiter, is your hand up?
Yes.
Good evening to you. Yes.
Yes, mine is in the form of a question.
Yes.
Can we relate a teacher who joins a new school, or rather gets promoted in a school? Can we say that they go through these stages whereby if someone is newly appointed into a new position, there's the initial stage whereby the forming stage, the socializing stage, where there is a display of a lot of eagerness and the socializing. Then they go through the phase of storming stage, likely to face some conflict, some competition, then later becomes a norm, performs, and then enjoyment. Can we relate to that?
Correct, Whiter. You are right. You see, we can look at these 5 phases in the light of, first and foremost, in the light of what defines a group as the group begins and grows. The group begins and grows. And we may also want to interpret these phases in terms of you come and you join this group. So you are a new member. For you, in your consciousness, the group is beginning. You've not belonged to it. And I think that's Whiter where you are addressing. You are joining the group for the first time. You are joining this school after your graduation to teach there, or on BOM, basis. And this is a group, you feel that you are joining one of the highest performing schools in the region. You are having eagerness. You're feeling so enthusiastic that you belong to this group, forming. You are joining the group, you are forming stage. You have very high expectation. Notice how you talk within that group. You are asked a question and you are generally polite in tone. You are promising to do it and so forth. But you are very, very much unclear about how you'll fit into this group. For the first time, you've been hearing of Madam So-and-so the topmost performer in chemistry in that county or in the nation, you are now coming to the department where Madam So-and-so works, and you are not very sure of what to say. You know, you are asked in that first meeting, the first, whatever, first month, first term, the first 2 terms in that school, you are asked, how best do you think we can teach Form 1s? And notice it is Madam So-and-so, the best chemistry teacher, whatever, who is asking you that. And you are very much unclear about what you should say about this. Some anxiety, some questioning creeps in. I think you hear that. Do you get that?
Yes,
All
I
right.
did. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Macho, you like to weigh in on this? Lawrence?
Mwalimu, if you could go back a slide.
Yes. I go back.
Yes. So there is the previous slide, sorry, the other slide. Before
Still
this
I
one.
go back?
Yes,
I
please.
go back?
Yes.
So you would like me to go back there? The various
yes,
factors?
This is, yes. So, I mean, we looked at these various factors: physical, sharing common activities, security, and protection. You remember when we started and we talked about Judas?
Yes.
And then we had a lively conversation around Judases in the offices.
Yes.
And so I want, while we've discussed groups formation in the positive side, there is also group formation in the negative side. And if I look at security and protection, I'm looking at in instances of corruption, for example, where groups form to protect a cartel within themselves, to benefit from it. And they actually go through the same process of formation that we've looked at. And so I just wanted to throw it out there as I was looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, even these cartels are groups. Even they go through these different aspects of formation. And it gets to adjournment when maybe somebody is outed or somebody is caught. So that's what I wanted to share. Asante.
Yeah, when you say that, Macho, it reminds me, I don't know whether it was in the last class where Chris was asking us this question about corruption within an organization. I cannot remember the exact framing that Chris gave, but I remember him bringing up something about corruption. I don't know whether it was when we were talking about learning or whatever, I can't remember, but sometimes in some classes. So I think, Macho, you are bringing that one out, what Chris brought a few classes ago, very clearly, that even within that organization, there are also those negative forces, you know, and we'll be talking about those negative forces when we discuss the actual dynamics now within the group. There'll be, in fact, we say there'll be opportunities. Group dynamics are about you have opportunities to progress. At the same time, you face challenges to draw back. And that question which you bring in augurs well in understanding these various issues. And I think it was Waita who was bringing this out. Is it Waita? I can't remember. Where somebody said, is it possible? I think Madiang brought it. Is it possible that we may begin with the forming, come to storming, then come to norming, where we are now beginning to understand the norms that govern that group. And you see, at norming, we are saying that we are now taking off at a tangent to rise in performance. But then Madiang told us, is it not possible as we finish norming and we thought we wanted now to reach the apex of our performance index, instead of going to the apex, maybe we might coil back before we go to performing? And we said, yes, that is now a definition of the challenge that is before leadership within an organization and so forth. Othello, you have something to say.
Good evening, Dr. Thank you very much.
Good evening to you. Good evening.
Yes, thank you for the discussion. I've just come very heavy rain traffic on the road from I've been able to get here. So, in the last class that you had, I wasn't able because of the major network failure here on campus, on our campus here at Valley Road, where I joined the class from. And I think the last class where Chris was making that statement, if I remember correctly, was the weekend of 8-13. Our class was on 13. We were talking about types of organization learning and then looping. So we were talking about this. And then what I want to say with regards to tonight's class is that is it not imperative that when people are going to get into a group situation where group dynamics is important in an organization, is it not necessary or imperative that people be taken through group dynamics, the course of group dynamics, for them to know when they are going to be facing pitfalls in their group formation and their working situation? I'll just bring a situation analogy on a new Christian who is having a lot of zeal, is very excited about it, not knowing that the Christian walk is a long, long journey. So you get so excited early in your Christian life, then all of a sudden you start now, falling by the wayside. You start going back or backsliding, that kind of thing. Because Paul says that the race is not to the swift, but to the one who endures to the end. So this is what I think in organizations you need to have that group dynamic situation, that people who are going to work as a team be taken through a certain course, which will help them to understand group dynamics. Thank you.
Thank you, Othello. But you see, Othello, when you are talking, I was controlling myself. I felt like laughing, Othello. And the reason why I felt like laughing is this. I want to put it this way, and I would like colleagues to understand me. There is I think I should say, there is no such level of catechizing, such level of teaching faith, that if people are taught faith this way before they become, baptized, and then they'll become perfect Christian. You understand now why I was about to laugh? Othello, I'm saying, you are revealing a deeper challenge of life. When all is said and done, you turn around and discover we are simply human.
Yes.
Right? Somebody says, you discover we are simply made out of clay and we can break. You get it? So that's actually why I felt like laughing. Othello is telling us that, could it be possible? And I think, Othello, what you are addressing is learning, the topic we looked at on learning. Is it possible, as people join an organization, maybe we take them through orientation? First-year students, freshers, when they join university, they are taken through orientation, then they are explained to that this is how to behave, this is how to do, and so forth. When people are becoming converts, they go through those, religious, as it were, classes where they are taught that this is the kind of warfare you are joining. But no sooner are they baptized than you find, as you put it rightly, some of them, even those who don't backslide, they experience really difficulties in keeping up. And I think our devotion was about that. Look at the challenges that each of the 12 apostles had to go through. When you read the Gospels, you see that, at one point, remember, Jesus gets to the other side and, a crowd is before him, and then after that, the crowd has been listening. Jesus is just about to dispatch the crowd to leave, get back home. And remember, it is some of the apostles, I may not remember offhand the name, some of the apostles who come to him and tell him, Lord, it's becoming evening, it's becoming late.
Yes.
And this is a wilderness, a desert, whatever it is. We need to dispatch these people to go home. And then look at that conversation. He tells the apostles, we need to give them something to eat. Look at that conversation. One of the apostles reveals some level of selfishness and say, no, we don't have anything to give this this tent and hundreds of people. And then, another one sees an opportunity and say, there is somebody here with this number of loaves and fishes. And then the master responds, make them sit down and so forth. And then bring that to me. What am I revealing? I'm revealing the struggles of group dynamics, that even those who were with the Lord himself had challenges, had challenges. Look at another day, at Transfiguration, they are there and they feel so excited and even they don't want to leave that place. Remember, they start saying, can we build 2, 3, whatever, 3 tents here? The idea is they would like to remain there. And it reminds them that we must go where the challenges are, not where the glorification is. Odelo, do you understand that kind of dynamic I'm trying to put across? Eh?
Yes, I understand that. We have struggles still ahead of us.
Yes, even in the best of training, we must always remember we are a human. So when you are in those organizations, when you deal with people, always remember, because of the topics we've been going through, individual diversity, individual behavior, learning, motivation, and so forth, and now group dynamics and team dynamics. Always remember you are dealing with only but human beings who are weak, human beings who fail. Chris.
Yes, Daktari, my question is very simple.
Yes.
Can storming stage at any given moment be experienced at performing stage? Thank you.
Repeat your question again, Chris, and repeat it slowly. When you repeat it slowly, remember to listen to yourself. Remember also to listen to yourself. There is a reason why I'm saying you repeat. Come again.
I'm saying,
yes.
Can storming stage?
Yes.
Sometimes, and depending on the group and the team, be experienced. Yes, I like the way you're doing. Be experienced at the performing stage.
Yeah. The question you've asked has been answered.
Or
yes.
Or after the performing stage, just before the adjoining
that's
stage.
Why I'm repeating. I'm repeating again. The question you are asking has been answered. Has been answered this way. You see, on this level of strategies is how leadership moves a group, how leadership moves individuals forward. And we've indicated, you see, forming, storming, norming, performing, then adjourning. That is what effective leadership should do. Effective leadership should get a group, should get members within that group at forming. And somebody, I think it was Waita, who told us that looking at individuals might find the group. Now listen to that, Chris. Individuals might join a group. A teacher might join a school, might join a department when that department is at storming stage, not storming rather, at performing stage. But that individual, Waita put it very well, that individual will be experiencing the storming stage or will be experiencing the forming stage. So the idea here is, I said, these phases are about two things, are about individual experiences as well as group experiences. whether they be about individual experiences or whether these phases be about group experiences, what is fundamental is about what leadership does for that group or what leadership does for that individual. Chris, are we together now?
Yes, Dr.
Good. I think the remaining hand would be of Faith Nzuki, and then we move. Faith?
Okay. My view is it possible that the storm forming stage sometimes can forming of Form 4 East that were together? I don't know how they got the numbers, but we were there. And one day, the first day we were contributing, how have you been and all this. Then the second day, they proposed that we go and see our mathematics teacher. Then from that time now, the person who we can say is the chairman now of the group says we have a budget, we are going to start with a little so that everybody is on board. So we are leaving no one behind. And then they set a budget of simple 50,000, that is. Then the following day, everybody is saying, yes, we are going to contribute and we are going to do this. And the following day, the chairman himself then posted a pledge of 40,000. Then everybody now calms down. What is happening? Are we contributing or not? And then he's saying we can even keep the budget higher. And then from the look of things, people have been maybe, I don't know, with low self-esteem, because maybe it is many years after we're in Form 4 and you don't know how the others are doing. Maybe they are straining in life and even they cannot afford even a 2K. And then you are there. And everybody now goes very slowly about it. And they don't even contribute. Does it mean that we were forming and then we go to storming and we are almost dying because we are at that stage now?
Yeah,
thank you, Dr.
You are right. You are right. And you see, you can see here. Here you are almost dying. Can't you see? Can't you see?
Dr.
Yes.
Can I just say something?
Please.
That group was coming from formation to performance and adjourning at the same time without going through two.
You see, what Nzuki failed to tell us is what happened after that. You know, what happened after that? Did you move to norming? Did you move to norming?
I even called.
Or what happened? Yes, continue.
I personally called the chair and asked him, if you had that much, I think it was best that you could have laid it too low. And when the budget does not come to terms, then you'd say that those who have more can chip in. And then that could move. But with that high amount, and then everybody is wondering, I don't have even 2K with me. And the person who are in the same class is posting a 40,000 pledge. Then it all died. And I can see we are planning to go to the teachers' place on April, but I don't see it happening. I don't know why. So I'm just wondering because this one today has
that's the question. That's the question. You don't know why. That's the question. You don't know why. Now, the answer to you, I don't know why, comes in the strategies. The fact that you see, you begin, and in your second meeting, you are saying we must visit your mathematics teacher. And you see, you are not aware that within your group, there are those who hated that mathematics teacher because mathematics was very bad. And you see, you who performed very well in mathematics and loved mathematics teacher, you pronounce we are going to see mathematics teacher. You display a lot of eagerness. There is socialization. Nobody wants to say it is impossible. Everybody is talking very politely and saying that we need to stick to safe topics. You don't want to say, here I am, I cannot even buy toothpaste or something. And then comes the reality. You get a bad leader. So sorry to put it that way. We are just demonstrating. You get a bad leader who destroys it more and puts there a 40K. When he puts there a 40K, people are discouraged. People don't want to participate. There is a conflict based on differences of opinions on what you can afford or whatever. You see, you have just said, people start asking, are we really going or are we not going? people even want to appear that I'm the one who can give 40, mine I cannot give. So even the one who wanted to give 5 feels no, because of this competition, I'll not give. High emotions are right. Now, as high emotions rise, now, does that mean you must die? Of course, you can see this curve, the curve of performance has not died. There is some space there you can see. Correct? Has not died. So you are here. But you see, how you will get off and start rising will depend on the leadership that you'll have. So if the leadership, remember I kept on saying, if you have effective leadership, you move to the next level. If you do not have effective leadership, chances are you could die there. Even the April you are talking about, some leadership would say, no, everybody must give 40,000 like me. If not, we are not going. And then you'll disintegrate. But if you now come together in this storming, you see, you've just been in storming, and when you meet maybe in this month of March coming, whatever, the story be, let's now get the norms. Let's get it right. What should guide us? Somebody say, now, let the minimum be 5,000, but you can give whatever you can afford. You see, you have accommodated the 40,000, and you have accommodated the one who cannot give the 40,000. You get that? Now, the moment you now really circumvent and really rise up from storming and you norm, whereby now you develop cohesion within that group. You develop clear purpose and goals, which are now well understood. You even discuss, we are not all the same. Like I remember we got to such a group, we were in high school together, and we were getting together about a year or so ago. And these things came up. We discovered, some of us, even those who had passed high school and gone to university, we discovered that they are not very endowed. One was doing some laundry work in some kitongoji, and in norming, we started saying that, how do we even involve him? And people started saying, take some of your clothes to his laundry, you will be empowering him. So as you do that, that member becomes more confident. Commitment is improved. Members get more engaged, and so forth. Anxiety is lowered, and you perform. You get? So how you move to the next level will be very much dependent on the leadership. So I think the question I give, my contribution to what you've raised, is to say, check your leadership. If your leadership style is good, your leadership strategies are good, you'll move. And as Chris said, if your leadership style, whatever, Chris put it nicely, if your leadership style is whatever it is, then within the storming will become your performing. I put it very, very crudely. Within your storming will become your performing, and that storming will become your adjourning, and so forth. All right. I think you've gotten the joke there, and I think that only serves to show that what we are discussing is very practical in organizations. That's, I think, what we can say. Now, we make some progress. Now, what is the role of leadership in shaping group dynamics? What is the role of leadership in shaping group dynamics? So that, you see, that is coming against the backdrop of those several questions we've asked. You see, Nzuki, you've given us that question. We are there, and very enthusiastic. We visit the mathematics teacher. We say we have a budget of 50,000, whatever it is. And Chris says that in doing that, you are reaching storming, and you are performing, and you are adjourning. And we put it that it is this ingredient of effective leadership that will see you succeed. So effective and a positive group dynamics are vital for any organization. Effective and positive group dynamics are very vital for any organizations. Leaders who understand group behavior, group structure, can use their knowledge to create, guide, and manage cohesive and productive groups. That group you are forming, it is not that you are making a mistake, but you see, what kind of leaders do we have in that group? Do they understand group behavior? Do they understand group structures? Do they have this knowledge? Now, what if they don't have it? But if they have it, they can use it to create, guide, manage cohesive and very productive, as it were, groups. Now, interpersonal conflicts will be there, will be experienced in any group dynamic, because remember, there are no two groups that can be alike, just the way there can be no two individuals that can be the same. Therefore, leadership must always, go through what we call personalized leadership style. We can never say this kind of style is the one that will cause you to succeed here. So that as we talk about various leadership styles, is it autocratic? Is it democratic? Is it transactional leadership? Sometimes we may not be able to say this one, but it is how you look at the challenges within that group, the challenges within that organization, and personalize that leadership. By personalized, I mean adopt certain elements, certain styles. You'll notice in modern days, we may not even say adopt democratic leadership, adopt autocratic leadership. Sometimes you may have to adopt what we call eclectic leadership, whereby you borrow something of everything. You borrow something of autocratic, something of democratic, something of transactional leadership. Package this together to have the group move ahead. Because you see, you are dealing with people who are unique, situations are unique. So it is up to the leader to adopt that personal leadership style that will actually respond to the challenges within that group. Now, although according to literature, a lot of literature, the idea here is literature says effective leaders in a group or in an organization are members who take charge and manage other members' activities. You find that Mahatma Gandhi would say, leadership is not about being in charge. You see, I'm putting it really. When you read literature seems to give an impression that to be an effective leader in an organization, then you are that person who takes charge. If you want to appoint an effective leader in a group, you are a headmaster. Sorry for that. Please. You are a headmaster in a group and you want to appoint. Please. That is stopping the flow of thinking. Please. So you I don't know where that is coming from.
Josephine, kindly mute them.
Okay. All right. That disturbs the flow a bit. So let me try to capture that flow again. So we are saying, when you read various literature, the idea seems to be that if you are a headmaster, if you are a CEO, and you want to appoint some leaders in some groups within the organization, you want to appoint, say, some acting head of department, you want to appoint a secretary to that, whatever it is, then you are thinking in the light of a lot of literature that pick on those members who will take charge and manage other members' activities. You see, that leadership, effective leadership, may sound to be about those members who take charge and manage other members' activities. But we are saying, if you listen to the wisdom of Mahatma Gandhi says, leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. You see, leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. And that is how we must move. That's how we must move within group dynamics. That's how we must move within organizations. Now, there is a very close relationship, therefore, between organizational leadership and the group dynamics within that organization. In other words, within that organization, the leadership that is adopted in that organization is not just about the overall goals of the organization, but it is about how those small groupings within the organization will be guided towards that greater organizational goal. Have a look at this. We'll now look at organizational leadership and the group dynamics. Now, group dynamics play a very important role in determining an organization's success or failure. Whether an organization will succeed or not, it will depend on the dynamics within the smaller groups within that organization. Whether that school will achieve their target mean score this year or not, it will depend on what happens in the smaller departments. It will depend on how the cooks in the dining hall prepare the food, the meals in time to save time, how they serve it. It will depend, the entire organization. So group dynamics play a very important, pivotal role in determining the success or the failure of an organization. Now, leadership as that driving force in that organization has the potential of either driving that organization and those groups towards the desired goal, or even plunging that organization into an entire dysfunction. We note that leadership is very central, is the driving force behind these dynamics. If it is captured, controlled, utilized, and directed properly, it can either push the group, push the dynamics within that organization towards either greatness, success, or towards just simple dysfunction. Always remember, group dynamics within an organization is always multifaceted. It has several faces. Most organizations could be inherently inclined towards groupism, for example. We are talking here about a school, the structure of a school, generally structured towards departments, whatever the school. So some organization may be inherently inclined towards groupings due to their structure and so forth. So as a leader within that organization, you must see how to calculate, how really to direct those structures within those groupings. What I mean to say, even if you want to evade the group dynamics within an organization, you quickly find some organizations by structure, by their natural existence, are structured in such a manner that they must have groups, as it were. Now, the role of leadership in an organization is founded on the conception of group dynamics as a double-edged sword. This is what one of our colleagues said a few moments ago. You want to understand leadership, the role of leadership, the place of leadership in any organization. Why does leadership exist in an organization? If you like, it is group dynamics. It is those conflicts within organization that arise on the level of groups that actually justify why leadership must be in those groups. And it is justified, good leadership is justified on the basis that group dynamics, the nature of remember group dynamics is about individual behavior, how they interact in the light of organizational goals, group dynamics. So, group dynamics within an organization always presents itself as a double-edged sword. Why double-edged? On one side, it provides organizational opportunities, what you need to do in order to succeed. So here we're talking about providing those opportunities to foster work efficiency and achieve greater goals, providing those opportunities that can provide a healthy working environment where employees will find it easier to nurture themselves and even succeed. Yet on the other side, group dynamics, again, induces the challenges. So group dynamics are about the opportunities in the organization. Group dynamics are also about the challenges that will be associated with those groupings. And this is where the role of an effective leader comes into real play. This is really where the role of an effective leader comes into play. Now, having seen those elements of how group dynamics determine the kind of leader we have in an organization, then it's important then we try and understand the elements that define, that constitute group dynamics within an organization. Always remember, group dynamics are about individuals within that group, within the organization, the individual behavior, which we are carrying from several weeks back, maybe about 4 or so weeks back, when we talk about the diversities within individual behavior. We are talking about the interactions with one another. We are talking about how this individual behavior vis-a-vis their interactions in the context of how this propels the group towards the overall organizational goals, or how it poses challenges to the achievement of organizational goals. Now, the essential elements that define group dynamics include what is projected before you, includes elements of task performance. How are tasks performed within that organization? Elements of how we maintain behavior. Maintaining behavior, we are asking ourselves, after we have defined a certain way of doing things, and we go back to what we were talking about in that group forming, after we've come at that level of forming, we've come to storming. The question we face is this: when we reach norming and make the norms, those norms are supposed to maintain a certain level of behavior. We're talking about self-interest behavior. How is self-interest behavior manifested? And how will the self-interest behavior undermine the overall group interest or group behavior? Talk about the group norms, talk about the roles of people. Remember what we discussed about both the real and the perceived roles. Talk about the status of members. Talk about the cohesiveness, the support within the group. And talk about how we look at the manner in which individuals participate and interact within that group. And therefore, when you put all this together, you should be able to define effective teams or effective groups, as it were. So let's look at the first element, which is really the task performance, Now, task functions rather. Now, when you are talking about group functions, we ask ourselves the question, group functions, what do groups exist to do within an organization? That means we must be able to define, especially in the context of what we defined as formal groups, we must be able to define the functions of every group. So 3 functions that influence the effectiveness and the productivity of a group are: 1, the task functions, the maintenance functions, and the self-interest functions. So you're looking at a group existing, and this group has functions. So these functions are of 3 types. We talk about the task functions. What do they exist to do? What task is assigned to this particular group? So what do we do to promote that task? Maintenance function. How do you maintain it? Self-interest functions. How do individual interests come into play within that group? So now we look into each of these functions and see. We begin with the task functions. Now, when we look at task functions, here, as I've said earlier, this is the primary reason. Task functions will define the primary reason why the group was established. Remember, the primary reason why a group is established must complement the overall group goal. For example, if you are talking about perhaps in a bank or in an NGO, and this group, the NGO perhaps deals with the community investment, maybe socioeconomic development, investments within the community. So looking for donor funds and so forth, in training members of the community, investing in them and training them and so forth. So the groups to be formed there must be aligned with that organizational goal. Therefore, when we define the various groups within that organization, we must define the function of every group in the light of the overall organizational goal. So if you find that you are in a school and we are talking about the Department of Languages, and the idea here is to implement curriculum, to evaluate curriculum, and so forth. And then you discover that department has been turned into a welfare group. And then the task is confused. The task is no longer in the direction that it was intended to be. That's why we are saying task functions of a group defines the primary reason for why the group was established. Now, to achieve the task, these groups must have members that fulfill really those intentions. Really these groups fulfill their tasks. Then the members within that group must be able to fulfill certain specific roles. So these roles are listed as initiating. Initiating is about proposing tasks or goals. Now, these tasks, these goals that the group is initiating, I repeat again, must be in line with the overall agenda of the organization. So if members are meeting, I repeat again, in the language department, and what people are proposing there, the task or the goals people are proposing there, is simply about how to contribute, for so and so forth, how to go for a merry-go-round and so forth, and that becomes the core. Then what you are initiating is actually opposed to the fundamental functions of that group. So initiating, information seeking, that group must be engaged to find out why are learners, scoring low. Why are we finding it difficult to teach this topic? Do we bring in some experts to advise us on pedagogical orientation in this subject and so forth? So seeking information, giving information. clarifying ideas and bringing really closure by summarizing. We must have people who can be able to give closure by really summarizing, restating, and offering solutions. So you see, all these 6 elements within task functions must be related to the overall organizational goals and so forth. If they are not, then you see, it tells you the group is now beginning to go at a tangent to organizational roles, and there are possibilities we might not be able to succeed. Now, within those behavior, we now talk about the maintenance behavior. The maintenance behavior. So you see the first one, we define the tasks of that group. So if you are a CEO, if you are a leader in an organization, and there are groups, the first thing really to do, to be able to ask yourself, what are the functions of the various groups within the organization? Then when you go to every group within that organization, be able to identify these 3 critical functions, that the task functions, that group exists to do what? Now, the maintenance behavior or maintenance function, here you ask yourself, rather, you reflect on the fact that each group needs social emotional support to be effective. So we are asking, how do you maintain that group? So this group can be maintained through various maintenance behaviors, maintenance functions, such as encouraging, improving, really group, harmonizing what is in that group, trying to train people how they can reach compromise and so forth. So when you talk about, for example, encouraging members, you do this by showing regard for other members and providing positive response to their contribution. So you encourage. That means you are maintaining the group behavior. You need to improve that group. You can do this by expressing group feelings, sensing moods if you are a leader, and relationships. Encouraging an atmosphere where feelings can be shared, ideas can be shared, and so forth. When you talk about harmonizing, remember, we are now identifying maintenance functions. What do you do in order to maintain a group not to collapse? I think it was, I don't remember, somebody, was it Nzuki or whoever, was talking about coming together to go visit a mathematics teacher and people coming out with various ideas. Now, and Nzuki, you told us you wonder whether the group is collapsing or not. How do you rescue the group? You are asking, how do you maintain that group it doesn't collapse? What should the leadership be engaged in? Should be engaged in how to encourage, how to improve the group, how to cause harmony, how to develop harmony, e.g., how do you reconcile differences and how do you reduce group tensions? When some people are saying, no, we were in that big school, there is no way each one of us is going to contribute less than, say, 30,000. No, but you don't know what people are going through. So how do you harmonize? When you harmonize, you are maintaining the group. That is a maintenance function. How do you compromise? You compromise by admitting errors and looking for alternatives. That, now, see, somebody has just given 40,000. Are you going to say that return the 40,000 to him? No. You are going to say now, you are going to reach a compromise by saying, how do we talk about now a minimum so that if we happen to say, give a minimum of 2,000, but those who are well endowed, you might give up to what you can afford. You are striking a compromise. For what reason? To maintain the group, to maintain those people being together. And then you see another way of really maintaining a group is by gatekeeping. So by gatekeeping here, leadership does this by attempting to keep communications flowing. You facilitate the participation of members. You suggest procedures for sharing discussion so that in the example that was mentioned about contributing to visit that mathematics teacher. Think about on that WhatsApp platform you are on, all of you. Has it gone mute? Nobody is talking. No. If nobody is talking, if leadership is not talking, then there is no gatekeeping. No gatekeeping because nobody is attempting to keep communication flowing. Nobody is facilitating the participation of members. Nobody is suggesting how to get out of that storming phase, as it were. Then finally, you see another way of really maintaining behavior there is by standard setting, And in standard setting, we see that we can do this by reminding members of the group's norms, the rules made, the roles that exist, and so forth. Now, what is fundamental about maintenance behavior? You can now see the discussion we had on those phases. Now it is revealed in the maintenance function that it is possible to begin at forming, come at the storming, move on really to the higher level of really norming, and go to performance. And in the middle of performance, before actually you adjourn, I think that's what Chris was sharing with us. Before you adjourn, you discover you seem to be storming again. So what do you do there? One of the maintenance function of the group is actually to set standards. And in setting standards, you are trying to remind members of the norms of that group, what you did at the norming stage. You are reminding them of the rules. You are reminding them of the values, the roles, and so forth. So if you are able to succeed with that maintenance behavior, maintenance function of the group, then we are able now to move to the self-interest behavior, Now, when you are reflecting on the self-interest behavior, we are generally asking, in the context of group interests, where are what we can describe as individual interests? So self-interest behavior is often displayed by some individuals who will tend to depart from the group performance. And that departure from group performance can actually affect the group's task achievement. So you notice people want to seek individual interests at the expense of the group interests. Now, there are certain activities that will identify self-interest behavior within a group. You'll be able to see them. Remember, this self-interest behavior can come in as a negative current, but because I said that you must always remember we are human beings. We must always, be in such a situation that we expect this. So some of the activities that will help you identify self-interest behavior that will rise up to undermine the interests of the group might include things like domineering spirit, that displays lack of respect for others, cutting others off the group and so forth. This leader or this individual who rises and you find is about self-interest. Like you form that group of all the students of that school, that group of those who left that school in that particular year. And somebody's already thinking about how do we put money together so that, we invest in this. And he's thinking of how he'll be able to bring up certain colossal amounts of money, because it will bring this into. The idea here is you can clearly see that somebody is actually domineering the group, as it were. Somebody is really domineering the group, as it were. This self-interest can also manifest itself through a sense of controlling. There are those individuals who would not want to listen to others. They want to restate what even other members suggest in different meanings. You can see that person. You can see that this person is only worse if that person is a leader. better if he's an ordinary member, though not recommended. But if he's a leader, he's the chair of that team, and whenever an issue comes up, somebody suggests something, he can't listen to it. You start saying, I wanted to say, and somebody says, I know you want to say this. And sometimes restating other people's opinions in completely different sense and meaning. You will see and identify self-interest behavior in groups manifested through blocking, members who stifle a line of thought from others, who change the topic either away from the point of view or back one's interest. So you say something, you want to develop a certain line of thought, and these members would just change the topic. They would change it away from the point we are discussing, or we change it away from for their own personal interests and so forth. You'll see this self-interest behavior manifested through manipulation. This can be seen when members provide self-serving information or a single point of view designed to achieve a decision that is consistent in their position. So the idea here is you can see that domineering, controlling, blocking, manipulating. You can see members belittling one another through put downs, through sneering at other people's point of view and so forth. And finally, you can see members who, as it were, split the hairs in an argument. You know, these are members who will actually, who like to nitpick. Nitpicking means you want to follow certain details that may not be very necessary, but which you know they'll actually end up destroying the opinion that somebody gave. For example, you wanted to collect some money to invest, if that is an investment grouping, and somebody is keen on discussing really how that will be possible and so forth. They search for very insignificant details that delay the solution or even sometimes undermine another person's point of view. So these elements, these issues we are putting across, they can help you within those group dynamics, within those organizations, to be able to see and isolate between self-interest behavior and actually the behaviors that are displayed in the overall interest of the group, as it were. We now look at norms as another important element in group dynamics. So when you are thinking about norms, you know, I would like to invite you, for example, to think about a new member who joins a group. You know, whenever a new member joins a group, he may initially search for clues, you know, about what type of behavior is acceptable in that group. You know, somebody joining that company, that school to teach there, may want to know what is the dress code that is acceptable in this organization. You know, somebody may ask, how do I address my supervisors, my bosses? So somebody joining a given group or a given organization wants to know about how to behave. You know, we liken this, for example, to the forming stage. Somebody wants to know, when the head teacher is in the staff room, what are the topics or discussions that are acceptable and which ones are not acceptable, are to be avoided? So when you think about a new member joining a group, you can see that member struggling to know what the group exists like, how the group displays itself. So group norms are normally, you know, established in the early stages of group development. You know, we are not trying to say, you know, that this is done at simply the forming stage. What we are trying to say, you know, these things may happen so concurrently. You come in, you are discussing about this thing, this teacher who has joined the school, he's orienting himself with the norms of that group and so forth. So these group norms can be both formal as well as informal. What is fundamental to note is that norms are collectively held expectations of how a group will function. Norms are about how the group will function collectively. They are not about individual behaviors. When we recognize these norms as important, we are now able to move the group forward, because these norms provide the regularity within that group. These norms provide the predictability within that group. So these norms become a reason for predicting that members will act this way. That's why it is important when members join a group, they move quickly to identify, as it were, what are the norms of these groups. Now, these norms may include various elements. Norms within a group may include, for example, norms about how work performance is done, how attendance is done, and so forth. On the overall, norms within a group are of three types. The first type of norms within a group are loyalty norms. In loyalty norms, we are talking about things like beliefs that managers have to work, for example, on weekends. Beliefs that managers, for example, have to work on holidays, and so forth. So you see, loyalty norms, the belief that, managers must not just work within the usual working hours. So that kind of norm wants to communicate that if you are a manager, you must give your utmost loyalty to the company, loyalty norms. So those who become, for example, bank managers, they are not those who will actually say, work ends, you report to work at 8 and you leave work at 5. No. Loyalty norms is about norms that define those who completely are loyal to the company, those who completely do not count the minutes, do not count the hours. Theirs is about the interests of the organization, as it were. So the first type of norms in organization, in groups, is what we define as loyalty norms. There could also be what we may call dress norms. Dress norms. Dress norms would be anything that moves from uniforms. For example, there are some banks, some organization where specific uniforms, specific shirts, ties, and so forth must be put on a given day of the week. For example, you work for some county government, and on Friday, this is the dress code. So if you are seen not to put on that way, then you are deviating from the dress norm of that organization. Finally, we can talk about the reward norms. Reward norms include things like the benefits that come as a result of what individuals or groups do or how they perform within that organization. So the reward norms will talk about the criteria for productivity levels, the criteria that one must exhibit in order to get this reward, and so forth. So you see, once you talk about an organization, once you talk about the groups within an organization, then you must establish these norms. So if you have various, as it were, groups within the organization, you must be able to define what are the specific norms, what are the issues that actually make them different, as it were. Next, we'd like to talk about the group roles within an organization. Now, group roles, can be grouped or can be seen to be of two main kinds. There are two kinds of roles present more or less generally in all groups. We talk about the assigned roles. You know, assigned roles could be titles, that so-and-so is the CEO, so-and-so is the chairman, so-and-so is the head teacher, so-and-so is the head of department, so-and-so is the secretary of the department, and so forth. Assigned roles. They are assigned by virtue of the titles you hold. If you are a class teacher, you know, the roles you do, once you cease being a class teacher, you cannot assume those roles again. So assigned roles are about roles that flow from your title. And then we have what we call the emergent roles, which simply arise as a result of group social or emotional needs. For example, within that organization, within that specific group, you are a member there, or you are the CEO of the organization, and you have this person who is neither the secretary of that group, he's not the head of department of that particular department, but he's a confidant. This is somebody you can trust. This is somebody you can seek advice from. So it is not an assigned role. You know, we are talking about both positive and negative emergent roles. There could be somebody is known that within that group is a gossiper. Somebody is known as a mentor. Somebody is known that there is a way that people in that group know that when they fail, this is the scapegoat within that group. Emergent roles, you know. So these ones develop very much in the light of individual behavior of members within the group. Now, two factors that impact negatively on the effectiveness of organizational roles would be, one, the role ambiguity. That you see, you are the chairperson, you are the CEO, but the manner in which you act, we are not very sure what you are. So this one will occur when a person is unclear of what is expected of him. You see, we talked about this much earlier, several weeks ago. You appoint somebody to become a chairman of a given department. You appoint somebody to become a class teacher, but this person does not really understand what is expected of him, as it were. So role ambiguity can be a factor that can actually impact very negatively on the effectiveness of organizational roles within the group dynamics. The second factor that can impact negatively is what we call role conflict. You know, somebody is given a given role within the organization, but seemingly there is somebody who performs a role closely similar to that. So role conflict occurs when a group member feels his or her job overlaps with others, or if the job description is very unclear. So whenever we have these two elements or any of them within group dynamics, so you understand the concept of group dynamics. Whenever such things rise up, such factors rise up, then it is possible to be able to see that effectiveness in organizational role will be impacted negatively. Othello, just give me a moment, we make some progress here. I'll come back to you. And then we talk about status within an organization, And you see, when you're talking about status, this must be separated from roles. You talk about status, you talk about rank symbols within an organization as being based on defined factors. Now, you see, by status here, we are now thinking about how do you view, or how do we view the senior teacher within that school? Status, not by function. When the senior teacher comes to the staff room, you know, status is about how do we feel about it? How do you look at it? That concept, when somebody tells you the senior teacher is coming in, look at, for example, learners are in class. They were talking, and then one learner tells other students, class teacher is coming in. What status, what rank, what symbol does the status of a class teacher hold in the context of that classroom? That's what we're talking about. Now, status reinforce the authority, the hierarchy, and the reward system within a group. Status signify progressive and individual mobility defined by authority, decision-making, and increased prestige. Therefore, status leads to increased motivation. So what we are saying here, status within a group, status within an organization, we'll talk about the authority within the organization. So the challenge here, the dynamic here would be when somebody is within a certain rank. I find it difficult to say within a given position. No, within a given rank, within a given status. So he holds that rank, he holds that status, but he does not signify his life, his demeanor within the organization, within the group, does not signify the authority that status intends to communicate. We're trying to talk about, if you are a headmaster, status. Then when you move around the school, your movement must signify the authority, the status within your title. That's actually what we are talking about. So status becomes a very critical component when you are analyzing group dynamics. Now, group cohesiveness is another important factor of group dynamics. Group dynamics. Remember, group dynamics is about the behaviors within that organization, that group, the interactions within that group, and how these two are collated together towards either or both group goals and organizational goals. So when you talk about group cohesiveness, we are ultimately indicating that groups imply people come together as a unit. For what reason? To perform with the professionalism and dedication. Now, to achieve these two ends, then it is important that people within a group must live, must manifest themselves as a unit, must share tasks. Every person's contribution must be recognized as such, as opposed to the conflicts, the ambiguity, and so forth we have. Cohesiveness is the one that ensures that within that group, people come together as a unit. They become a unit. To some extent, although not 100%, they must cede something of their individuality so that they can perform with the professionalism and dedication. Therefore, group cohesion creates a sense of belonging. You remember that in our devotion. Group cohesion within a group must be capable of creating a sense of belonging. Let every member experience a sense of belonging. Group cohesion attracts high performers within the group, and group cohesion provides opportunity for individual recognition within that group setting. So you can see the crucial importance of cohesiveness within a group. This cohesiveness, very important within a group. Now, we also need within that group, within that context of really group dynamics, an element of support. So these elements of group dynamics can be interpreted in the context of Tuckman's 5-phase model of group formation. So as the group is forming, group formation, along those five phases, you'll require support. Remember, something of maintenance. You'll require support. So we're saying, in order to achieve effective group performance, there is a need for training. One way of supporting group existence and fashioning the group dynamics towards the overall organizational goal is to foster training within that group. So this training will involve really how we fashion individual skills to group interests so as to maximize their contribution. So I've seen in some schools, they employ some teachers on board of management status, then they must be taken through some form of some form of training. This is partly what Othello was referring to. We must retrain these people, fashion them according to the interests of the group. But I keep on saying, however much we train, we must remember we are dealing with human beings. Another way of offering support to groups is team building skills, team building skills. So what we sometimes, have to take members outside there in workshops. Sometimes we've been working for 2-3 years. The cohesiveness is getting lost within the group, within the organization. Take them out for team building and so forth. We can also support a group by trying to identify and recognize successes within that group. So you can do this through rewards and so forth. You can support a group by promoting effective management within that group dynamic. So support effective management. So think about, once we have effective managers, like in those phases, the group will move forward. Once the managers are ineffective, the group will disintegrate. Then finally, we must also be able to recognize and manage diversity within that organization, within that group. So think about the various situations that the group find themselves in. What management style can we be able actually to propose to be able to do this? Now, having said this, we now really consider the last element of group dynamics, and this is what we call transactional analysis. When you've looked at all those facets within a group, you reach a place where you ask yourself, you need now to look at these elements of group dynamics and analyze them. So when you talk about transactional analysis, you are simply asking yourself, or rather you are addressing yourself to the manner in which individuals will participate and interact within the context of a group. Therefore, to do this, you must identify, first of all, the nature, as it were, of participation and interaction in a group. You must be able to ask yourself, what is the nature of these interactions within a group? Now, Eric Berne in the 1950s, identified three ego states that define transactional analysis within a group. These ego states are listed as parent, quote unquote, parent, adult, and child. Remember, these are figurative terminologies that show how the ego operates within a group in an organization. So there are people within a group, talk about that department within that bigger organization, whose behavior is like the behavior of parents. Others take the behavior of adults, while others take the behavior of children. Those who are in the level of parents will display, a kind of a protective behavior, a nurturing behavior, a controlling behavior, as it were. They behave like parents. Therefore, they are protective. You can now see the parent. They are protective, you know, they display the behavior of nurturing. So you'll hear these people use terminologies like, you know the rules, now follow them. Why are you not following the rules? You've heard them speak. You've heard that headmaster speak in the staff room. You've heard that, you know, that class teacher talk in the classroom. And the whole idea here is they always refer, or rather they often refer to policies and standards by actually inviting people that since they know the rules, then they have to follow them. Then talk about those individuals who are in the adult ego state. These individuals will appear to be more rational. They appear to be calculating within that group dynamic. They appear to be very factual and very unemotional. As regards decision making, they rely so much on research, on facts, on data processing, and so forth. Now, to the other level, there are those who operate on what
Daktari, is it me or we've lost him?
It's like we've lost him.
We have lost you at the very last stage.
Othello, continue.
Othello, you can finish.
No, I was actually planning to propose that in the interest of time, we postpone some of the things to next class because there are many things which have been touched on.
Yeah, wait, mute. Hey.
Yeah.
That.
I thought people are in class.
Hiyo ni tabia gani?
Wita is in a rally. Anyway, go on, Othello.
I was saying that I was proposing that there are many things that have been touched on tonight in the slides, the latter slides that we have had, so that we can postpone the discussion to next class because there is no time now.
Last time we passed this 9 something. Today we are also at 9 something.
I don't even know who is going to cook.
But we are done. We are done.
We're done.
As it were.
There are those terms which you are very interested in.
Can we make progress?
Group clown.
Finish the last slide.
Order. Those are things I want to look at in our next class.
As it were, this class
so everybody is talking now.
Hello, can we have progress now?
Can we have order? Othello, drop your hand.
Hey, you're a prefect. Can we be muted?
Good.
Yes.
This class is being recorded, so don't make a lot of noise. It is being recorded.
Chris, you are a self-appointed prefect today.
Yes. We are looking at very good, as it were.
Someone to stop recording.
Josephine is a host. Josephine, you can stop
recording. Not being recorded.
Yeah,
recording.
Someone to stop.
Lastly, I'm interested in group clown, a group scapegoat.
Has somebody tried to communicate with Daktari? Because we could be waiting up to 10 o'clock. It's already 9.
We are not even waiting. People are supposed to go.
We have given you the mandate, please. Do it for us.
Hey, Daktari.
I'm not saying I'm being thrown out. I'm just struggling.
Yeah, actually, people are saying it's already 9. I don't know if we should dismiss ourselves or what is your suggestion?
We are two.
Yes.
You notice the slide for So it's actually
We can't hear you, Daktari.
Daktari ako na call na mtu.
Anapigiwa simu na Othello.
All right, let me ask my colleagues to listen to you so that you can tell them.
Yes.
Kindly, colleagues, this is Daktari. He wants to communicate something.
Okay.
Daktari,
You notice it's already 9. So actually you notice the network threw me out when we were on the 20. Name those slides. So you can see before it ended, we were actually in the tail end. Now, what I wish to guide is that on the last slide is actually an assignment. We were actually on the last slide. We had finished. So the final slide is an assignment, which I think is already posted on your learning platform. Is that okay?
yes.
Which week?
Yes, I will. I'll be able to check. Which actually?
It will be posted. I asked Dr. Mnyao to post it on week 7.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do immediately now, I'm trying to send these slides
Yes.
on your WhatsApp so that you can see that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Daktari, and have a good night.
Well, thank you and a good night.
All right. All right. Thank you. Colleagues, the assignment will be posted. Actually, the slides will be posted on the WhatsApp group, and on the last slide is the assignment. So we'll check when it's posted. Thank you so much. And may I ask Faith Nzuki kindly pray for us so that we end this class.
Let us
Aki network yake inasumbuanga.
Faith. Evans Lusasi from Kuwait, please.
Why don't we just end the class?
For us.
Network yake.
Well, okay. Regina Waiter.
Ama Mogeremo said. Ama
Today we have to
Mogeremo
pray.
said.
Regina, pray.
Yes. Okay, let's pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you. We worship you, Lord. Thank you for the care taken upon us this day. Thank you for the class that was sent. We pray that as we break for the night, Lord, will be with us. And your holy angels watch over us. Lead us and bless us. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.